So again, my name is Jan Frowijn, Vice President of Business Collaboration for the US, Mexico, and Central America at the Rosen Group. I will talk today a little bit about leadership and leading in uncertain times. This with a focus on crisis management. I will walk you through our Rosen or our considerations and our lessons learned over particularly the last year, during and still way into the Corona crisis. And I think this will maybe be a little bit of a different or maybe a little bit more general topic and a different type of presentation compared to what you have seen so far. So bear with me, and all in all, my talk will take about 15 to 20 minutes, and there will be time for questions and for comments. And I'm looking forward to hear more from you about your experience and your best practices after the presentation or in the breakout room. So very quickly, let me start with giving a quick introduction for those of you who are maybe not familiar with what we do as Rosen. So we are a worldwide provider of solutions in all areas of the integrity process chain. And this in a wide range of industry. This including and also importantly also the energy sector. We develop and manufacture in-house products, equipment, and software, and also methods for the inspection, diagnosis, and the protection of industrial assets. In Mexico, Rosen is best known for pipeline inspection, or what is known as pigging, and also pipeline integrity management and engineering services. We also do inspection and the assessment of storage tanks, piping, tubing, in plants and terminals and refineries. And we also developing solutions for instance, flow measurements and a lot more. Geographically, Rosen or the Rosen Group operates in more than 120 countries worldwide. North America, we have offices in Canada, in Calgary, and also in the city of London in Canada. In the US, in Houston, in Columbus, Ohio, we have a small office in San Luis Obispo, California. In Mexico, we operate out of our facility in Boca del Rio, in Veracruz, and we also have an office in Ciudad de Mexico. So we have been in Mexico for about 30 years. So we are very much an international group of companies, but also Mexican. We have personnel, we have presence, continuous presence in Mexico. So we are both international and also a Mexican company. Now, looking back, it has been more or less a year since the last Mexico Energy Forum, that was held. I think also in the first quarter, mid-March of 2020. And at that time, in the first quarter of 2020, the coronavirus was already causing worldwide concerns. In some regions, maybe more than in others, but I think that a few of us at the time, back in the first quarter of 2020, really expected that we would still have virtual events now about a year later. And I must also say that I always enjoy Jeroen and his team's in-person events at the Sheraton Hotel, the Energy Forum, or also the Oil and Gas Summit, or the Mexico Talent Forum. But with now worldwide an estimated 2.5 million people that so far died from the coronavirus. 2020 and also the start of 2021 has for many just been devastating. Within Rosen, we have employees, colleagues, and friends that have lost family members or loved ones over the last year. And I think that by now, almost everyone, most likely also most of you, have had to deal with illness, with grief and loss of life as a result of the pandemic, as a result of this crisis. So according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, the coronavirus, the pandemic, is the defining global health crisis of our time and the greatest challenge we have faced since World War II. And having the Mexico Energy Forum or any event virtual and not in person this year around, it really seems trivial. I must say that the forum has been very good so far, and I enjoy the presentations and also the technology and the conference platform. So the pandemic has brought on a health crisis and has globally brought economic and also political factors to the surface. Much of it is out of our control. Looking at the pandemic or looking at any crisis, for instance, also a crisis as the result of workplace violence or damage or interruption caused by natural forces such as a hurricane, a flood, or an earthquake, or even a war or political unrest or instability. A crisis refers to an unexpected or sudden or unwanted event. And it's clear that different crises, different types of crises, provide different challenges. But what crises have in common is that they are events that typically arise on short notice. They are sudden or unwanted events that can cause major disturbances or instability in an organization and can trigger a feeling of fear and threat amongst the employees and maybe even amongst the leadership of an organization. Yeah, and this on a side note, I also presented on the topic of uncertainty and leadership at a conference a few weeks ago. This was the PPIM, or the Pipeline Pigging and Integrity Management Conference, typically held in Houston, this year also virtual. And I was preparing for the PPIM and also for this presentation, really in the middle of the severe weather event in Texas. So the extreme, for Texas, ultra low temperatures impacted as much as every aspect of the Texas energy supply chain. And the widespread power outages affected millions of people for several days, including also our Rosen Houston facility, and also to some extent myself. I live in the Houston area. And I think that many of you must have been on the receiving end of this unwanted event, or what I think that we can really call a crisis. And at the same time, with reportedly supplies from the US being interrupted and with supposedly limited natural gas storage capacity in Mexico, the crisis, I think it's needless to say that the power outages also cascaded into Mexico too. So looking at the crisis, there are different approaches to managing a crisis. And in this presentation, I have tried to summarize, high level, how we as Rosen or as the Rosen Group think that we can best prepare ourselves and manage unwanted events. So our approach, and I think most, if not all approaches, also in literature, start with a risk assessment. And this is about working together with key stakeholders to identify relevant threats and vulnerabilities and also potential impact of a crisis on the organization. And next, it's about identifying contingencies and planning the actions that will help respond or getting the organization through a crisis. And stress and panic can make it difficult to remember these actions. And you and your employees or your leadership, their role in a crisis response. And this to make sure that everybody is ready and prepared and knows what to do during a crisis. Training and practicing the plan is critical. And we also need to make sure that we keep the plan up to date, especially as new employees join or employees leave the organization, or new technologies or processes are implemented or changes occur. And importantly, also taking into consideration changes in the external environment. So managing a crisis, the pandemic, or the impact of a severe weather event, or power outages, or any crisis, it's a lot about situational awareness and decision making. First, ensure that you or your leadership has the information that you need and keep yourself informed. This is about intelligence, about external risk factors, and also internally organizational capabilities or the lack thereof, and understanding the gaps. And it's also about mobilizing resources for an appropriate tactical response. That is, decision-making in a crisis situation must be based on a comprehensive view of the situation, and decisions must take place also quickly. And the key here are decisions and actions for effectiveness, not just these decisions for efficiency. And just to keep in mind, in times of crisis, perfect decision-making is impossible. In order to make a perfect decision, you need perfect information. Striving for perfection can lead directly to analysis paralysis. So in times of crisis, chasing perfect decisions is really a recipe for disappointment, wasting time, and also inaction. So making critical decisions in times of crisis can also be hard. I think the global pandemic has forced organizations and leaders to make some very tough decisions. And we have seen that also the pandemic forced most, if not all of us, to revisit the size of our workforce and practices in terms of where our employees are working. This also with more, if not all employees working from home. And also decisions about how we are getting things done. This importantly to prevent the spread of the coronavirus and protect our employees' health and their overall well-being. So at the same time, we are also balancing continuity of service, our role in maintaining critical and essential energy or pipeline infrastructure, and of course also, our responsibility as a business to deliver results, including also financial results. Now, in times of crisis, potential strengths and weaknesses in organizational culture will also become more evident. Under pressure, the best and worst in the organization will surface. So company culture refers to the attitudes and behavior of a company's leadership and its employees. And the culture of the people that make up an organization and the values they hold is evident in the way how people interact internally with each other and also externally with stakeholders. So in a crisis, clearly organizational culture matters. And organizational culture makes a difference in how an organization anticipates and prepares, but also responds and adapts to a crisis to survive and even to prosper. So getting to a crisis is a lot about shifting the mindset of an organization and people in the organization from a sense of powerlessness to doing something and taking action. It is really about taking control and accepting responsibility for outcomes. So culture is importantly reflected in the behavior of leaders. Leadership during a crisis involves getting the organization through or out of an unfavorable situation. So leadership is about being present, being available, but also to motivate and to inspire your employees. So importantly, also to build trust during a crisis, leadership and communication across the organization needs to be transparent and honest, and this without creating panic among your employees. And maybe even more than in normal times in a crisis situation, we need to listen and acknowledge the concerns of our employees. It's really about showing empathy. This really not just because caring about our employees is doing the right thing. Also looking, especially also at the corona crisis or any crisis, how employees experience the organization and leadership during a crisis provides an opportunity to build trust. And the opposite is also true. If disappointed in the organization or if disappointed in leadership, if we fail to establish or to maintain trust during a crisis, this will potentially have a lasting impact on your organization's culture and also on employee engagement. So looking at crisis management, most approaches are organizational centric, and these are mainly concerned with how best an organization internally can prepare for, respond to, and contain a crisis. And these organization-centric approaches deny the view that when an organization is affected by a crisis, it is very likely that external stakeholders are too. So to effectively manage a crisis, we need to look out, not only look in at our organization, but also look out at our stakeholders in the environment. So during a crisis, it is critical to strengthen and also deepen relationship with those critical stakeholders. By recognizing the need and the challenges of our customers or other critical stakeholders, we can optimize our crisis management effort. So I think over the last year, most of us have seen the need to find different or new ways of doing things, both looking in at our own organization and looking out, looking at our business environments and our stakeholders. And to quote Winston Churchill, he once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And clearly, with all the complications and challenges we need to deal with, crises also present learning opportunities in the sense of doing things in different ways, and maybe also in ways we never thought possible before, or doing things better or smarter, beyond managing the immediate impact of a crisis. So beyond our own organizations and as an industry, it's also about how we work together in co-creating our own future, our future as an energy sector and the pipeline industry in particular. In the current political environment, also against the backdrop of many parts of the world, increased public scrutiny of the oil and gas sector, and as an extension also the pipeline industry, we need to ensure that we don't fall victim of an existential crisis of what's next. It's about the important role we play, or the role that we can play as an energy sector and also as a pipeline industry, in cleaner, more efficient, reliable, also safer fossil fuel solutions, and also in alternative energy sources, including also importantly hydrogen. This also, as mentioned in the previous panel. We think, as Rosen, we agree that hydrogen can be a reliable and an efficient energy source that will contribute to increasing demand for renewable energies. The adoption of green hydrogen is also taken increasingly a more prominent role in the energy discussion here in Europe, US, Latin America, as previously mentioned, also in Asia and also in other parts of the world. This also with Mexico expressing the commitment to produce more of its electricity with clean energy. I think goals as 35% by 2024 has been expressed by the government. And in the US early this year, also President Biden's intention to return to the Paris Climate Agreement and to achieve net zero emissions by 2020. So how much hydrogen will be consumed in the clean energy economy of the future, that will remain to be seen. And I think is also somewhat uncertain so far. But I think that globally, including also in North America and in Mexico, clean, but also blue hydrogen, even with its challenges to capture or recapture CO2, will almost without doubt be part of the future. Clean or cleaner will be part of the future's clean or cleaner energy mix. And then for pipeline operators, and as an extension also Rosen, the interest in transporting this energy source, hydrogen, through pipelines brings on two specific technical challenges, namely the conversion of existing natural gas infrastructure, to prepare them for pure hydrogen transportation or natural gas spike with hydrogen, and also the need for integrity management of these assets and the long-term effects of hydrogen on pipeline integrity, is compared to natural gas transported through pipelines. So with this, and to close out, and also to get back to the pandemic, I think it cannot be said enough, and let's be really thankful for all the healthcare workers, the first responders, and also others that have kept and continue to keep those critical and essential services across different sectors and industry going. And that also includes each and every one of you out there, your employees, and the contribution of all of us representing the energy sector. And also as Rosen, we also recognize the importance of the Mexico Energy Forum as an opportunity to connect with the energy sector in Mexico. And again, thanks to Jeroen and also his team and all others that contributed in making this event possible, virtual this year. And with this, I think we have about 5 to 10 minutes left for your questions and your comments. Mirjam?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Jan, for the presentation. Indeed, the first question from the audience would be how the uses of remote tools are growing during the pandemic, and especially, well, in this case, for pipeline integrity services.
So how we are using remote tools, that was the question.
Exactly. How is the use of remote tools growing for pipeline integrity services?
So now in our case, if you look at our operations, looking at pipeline inspection or pipeline integrity management services, we are in a situation that about half of our activities are performed in the office or performed in the field, and half of the activities, are more performed were traditionally performed in the office. So first thing, but we also we work with very large amounts of data, inspection data can be gigabytes or terabytes or even larger volumes of data. So for us, we back in March of 2020, we very quickly had to adopt, having people normally work in the office, the direct access to data from servers, having then switched to a home situation. And one thing is what we see is that with implementing remote work by people that normally work in the office, we also see, what for us was really a big advantage is that we also have now access to a much larger labor pool, where we typically were looking for people, living in Mexico City, in Mexico, or, if you look at the Houston operation, people living in the Houston area, we see, now that we have people that can work from home, it also opens up, a much larger labor pool, in terms of recruiting, talent over a larger geographic area. And looking in the field, field activities, in order to inspect a pipeline, we need to go out there, with our tools to launchers and receivers. So it is difficult to replace that by remote work. So our field activities and the preparation of our tools, that does take place in the workshop and does continue to take place in the field. So it is difficult, or we haven't really found a way to replace that by remote activities.
Perfect. Then another question would be, especially due to the growing importance of hydrogen, the question would be how green hydrogen is different than natural gas in terms of pipeline transportation, and is it harder to transport, or does it require more maintenance, for example?
No. So one very important difference is, especially in high-grade steel pipeline, hydrogen, the hydrogen molecules in natural gas can lead to embrittlement of the steel. So the wall, the steel wall of the pipeline, again, it's especially the case with high grade, X70 or higher grade steel. The embrittlement can make the pipelines more susceptible to cracking of the pipeline. So that is, I would say, from a pipeline integrity management point of view, one of the key differences looking at transporting natural gas to a pipeline. So it is a gas, but the impact that natural gas, that hydrogen, either hydrogen, if natural gas is spiked more than 10 or 20% with hydrogen or pure hydrogen, that can be an impact. And also from an inspection point of view, hydrogen can also affect the inspection tool or the components of an inspection tool, in that is moving through the pipeline. But from a pipeline point of view, the main difference, in my opinion, is on the wall of the pipeline and also the equipment that is used in order to inspect the pipeline.